Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar this afternoon, brought to you by two organizations, Condatis and Microsoft. I'm sure pretty much everybody in the world has heard of Microsoft. Yeah, the world's largest software company, a key partner of ours, and Condatis, we are a software consultancy based in Edinburgh. So this afternoon, we've got four of us here to give you a bit of an overview on the technology. So myself, I'm Chris Tate. I'm the CEO of Condatis, based here in Edinburgh. I'm joined by my colleague, Matt Fernandez. He is one of our lead solutions architects, an expert in Microsoft Entra and all things around that. And then from the Microsoft side, delighted to have two of our trusted partners here. Adam Fielder. I think I mentioned before to some other people that he's kind of a gamekeeper turned poacher, or other way around. So Adam has been on the other side of the fence implementing solutions around identity in organizations and moved over to Microsoft to give guidance and best practice to clients who are doing the same. And then John Burnett. John is a cybersecurity expert. So in all things, both cyber and identity, and as I'm sure we'll find out this afternoon, identity is a key cornerstone of providing a really strong security provision, which is a key aspect for people in the current climate. So what are we going to cover this afternoon? Well, firstly, a little bit about Condatis. So as I mentioned, everybody will have heard of Microsoft. Condatis, we are based in Edinburgh. We have a team across the UK, and we are a Microsoft solutions partner. So where Microsoft bring the expertise in the platform, Condatis come along and we do delivery at scale of specific solutions. So what we see here is clients coming to us across a range of sectors, including the UK public sector, to come out with solutions. So you can see here we cover things like the UK National Health Service, some of the large departments like Department of Work and Pensions and DWP, as well as some of the across retail, manufacturing, higher education, and some further abroad. What we specialize in is, I guess, large scale and complex solutions, but always happy to look at some smaller challenges. What we're finding in Microsoft Entra is there are new challenges to be overcome. One in particular, if we look at the Entra Suite, is on Joiner Mover Leaver, JML. A lot of clients are looking at either onboarding patients or students, maybe it'll be partners or employees, and that provision of a JML and automating that is a unique capability that Microsoft have been investing in and now expert in the field. So we'll be giving you more details of this. This is an example of one of the case studies which we've done for a large electronics supplier in the UK, where we implemented a proof of concept using Entra ID governance, really identifying key personas, how you would automate that, and then using Active Directory to provide a best-in-class system. Okay, another example of that for the NHS, this is a use of something called decentralized identity or Entra Verified ID. I'm sure we all remember back 5 years ago to COVID. At the time, the NHS were only able to provide staffing in their particular trust. So the NHS is built up of 220 trusts, and they wanted to provision the movement of staff between trusts in a quick and timely and safe manner. With their previous paper-based system, it would take them about 2 weeks. But obviously COVID wanted to accelerate that. So Condatis got involved with a couple of other companies, and we designed what's called a digital staff passport. And now with the use of Microsoft Entra Verified ID, clinicians and members of staff in the NHS can have their identity and their technical and clinical credentials stored on their phone, tied into a cryptographic key. And rather than it taking over 2 weeks to move between trusts, that process can take less than 30 minutes. So you can see here not only a combination of operational improvements, and I know that the UK PLC is looking for productivity improvements, but also really importantly, it's a security key consideration, because that cryptographic key, that alignment with knowing who the person is tied with their credentials, has enabled the NHS to improve their overall cybersecurity posture. There are a number of other opportunities that we can show from Condatis. So if neither of those reflect the business area that you're interested in, then please reach out to us. We have a number of case studies in a number of areas. Just want to touch on one further thing. We're obviously giving you a point of view from both Condatis and Microsoft. I always think it's great to get an independent third level view. And across the market research area, Gartner are often regarded as a market leader in the technology understanding and provision. Gartner release a number of reports which are called Magic Quadrants, showing who's leading in the field. And the one for access management, covering identity, is released in the autumn of each year. What's fantastic is that Microsoft have invested heavily in Entra. They've been a leader in the field and continue to be right at the top of that quadrant. And from a Condatis point of view, that's fantastic. We know that we are bringing the best technology to bear. If you want to have access to that report, Condatis can provide that to you. It's normally a report that costs quite a lot of money. But if you provide your details to us, we can give you access to that copy. And it will also give some details of some of the areas that Microsoft continue to develop in around Entra and its overall service provision. Okay, like I said, that's probably more than enough from me. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Adam, who's going to give you an insight as to what Entra and Entra Suite is and how it could be used potentially in your sector. Adam.
Hi, thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start with a confession, right? The Entra Suite bundle, when I first started reading and researching, what's included in this bundle, I was confused. And if I'm honest, I think when I speak to customers and colleagues from industry that I used to work with, there's still some confusion around it now. The penny drop for me, and I'd like to share that moment with you, to really share that penny drop moment of kind of why it made sense and the automation opportunities that are available. I need to kind of share a little background from our previous role at the City of London, if I can. So the City of London, I worked there for 3 years, and we created a technology vision, and that technology vision really centered around automating as many IT operational activities, moving things to the cloud, automating as much as possible, right? So the vision was very simple. We're going to get Windows 10, Office 365. We're going to make sure that they're evergreen. We're going to manage these by Intune, deploy them by autopilot. We're going to create a VPN from these laptops. So from wherever they are, they go directly to the cloud. There's no hairpinning around on-premise data centers and left and right. And we're also going to deploy Teams for telephony and for collaboration. So get rid of our incumbent telephony solution. To achieve that vision, we created a roadmap, which kind of led up to that little diagram just there, right? The end user device stack looks something like this. I'm not going to train this slide. I'm just going to talk about 2 lines on it. This is the VPN. We used Azure Virtual WAN, so we connected from the laptops directly into Azure, avoiding that hairpinning around. And we use zero trust at the point of authentication. And what that means is we check the device, we check the user to say, is the user allowed? Is the device up to date? Is it compliant, etc., before allowing it onto the network? The problem with that is that once on the network, you have full lateral movement across the network. Right? So it's kind of some elements of it as zero trust, like the authentication part, actually not at layer 3 in terms of network resources. Ideally, a user and a device would only be able to access the resources that they actually needed to consume rather than your whole estate, right? So if I went back in time, if I still worked there, I'd be reconsidering this, right? The other thing we implemented was Defender for Endpoint Mode content filtering. Now, this got us over a line. It got us a content filtering solution that was covered in our existing licenses, but there was a couple of challenges. That content filtering solution was assigned based on device name, right? So if a user moved device, somebody in IT needs to go back in and add that device to that content filtering profile, right? So a manual task that needs to be achieved. The other limitation is that it's not tenant aware. So while we allowed that user and that device to access Office 365 for obvious reasons, that's all of Office 365, regardless of which tenancy. So ideally, we would have had a solution that limited us to a certain tenancy that we wanted to access. In the last 6 months or so, Microsoft has released Entra Private Access. This solution replaces VPN technologies and provides that zero trust authentication zero trust connectivity at the point of authentication and at layer 3 in terms of networking. So this achieves kind of the NCSE recommendations on zero trust network connectivity. It also provides a content filtering solution, which is tenant aware and is assigned based on users. Right. So again, it's something that, you know, if I was still in that position, I'd be going back and saying, actually, we need to iterate on this. We need to kind of, you know, change the way this functions. My confusion came around the licensing and the bundle. Right? As a technologist, someone that's been an end user engineer and worked as a security professional, I kind of want to purchase these things, these content filtering, web security, and ZTNA type things, as a package by themselves. I don't necessarily want to buy the whole bundle, but it's actually cheaper to buy the whole bundle than it is to buy the two things individually, right? So this is my center of confusion. It never really made sense, right? Since joining Microsoft, I've spent a lot of time with customers talking about starters, movers, leavers. And in the last 10 or so months, Microsoft has released HR-driven provisioning, right? HR-driven provisioning allows you to create user accounts in your Active Directory from any system of truth. So it could be a CSV file, an API, a database, literally anything. You can create those user accounts automatically. Once you've created them in your Active Directory, they could then get synchronized up to Entra ID. So for your mailbox access, SharePoint access, things of that nature. Okay. What's more is that if you use one of these 5 HR payroll solutions, there's documented end-to-end guidance that actually says, you know, if you use, let's say, for example, you use SAP SuccessFactors, you add a new employee, that employee will get pushed to the provisioning service, which then creates the account. Once the account and the email address is created, it will write that email attribute back to SuccessFactors. So not only automating the IT process, but also helping out HR payroll with their kind of activities as well. Right? The best part about HR-driven provisioning is that it's included within your existing licenses. So anyone that has an E3 or E5 licenses is already entitled to this. Right? And this is the most important kind of message that I can kind of send over today. Right? So after doing this talk a number of times about HR-driven provisioning, working with customers, highlighting this as kind of like it's enabled under existing licenses, did lots of work on networking and, you know, other components, the penny finally dropped. And I'd like to share that with you now. As an example, your onboarding process will look something like as follows, right? So let's say you've gotten a vacancy within your organization, you go out to interview, you've selected the candidate and the candidate is successful. The next step will be then to check that candidate's government issued identity. Right? That takes place manually. Someone in HR looks at their government issued identity, they may take a scan or a photocopy of it, and it may be stored on one of your shared drives, for example. Then you know, an email gets sent over, or a service desk or a form gets sent over to your service desk to create that account. Again, a manual activity with the service desk staff are copying from left to right in terms of creating that account. Once the account is created, you then need to, you know, assign licenses, add permissions, add people to distribution lists, things of that nature. Then need to assign apps and permissions for those apps. You may need to assign ZTNA. If you use third-party solutions, this will likely be manual. So may pass over to your network team to add this, use add Bob into this group so we can access the housing applications. And your content filtering policy. So again, Bob works in licensing. He needs access to gambling content, and that's a manual activity to kind of do that, right? In the future, you can use Entra Verified ID to automate the process of the facial verification. You can use Entra HR-driven provisioning to automatically create the account and like synchronize all of the user attributes. Use Entra lifecycle workflows to assign the licenses, add people to group, distribution lists, things of that nature. You deploy all of your applications via Endpoint Manager. So it's part of modern management, autopilot, etc. Use Entra private access. So let's say Bob works in housing. You've synchronized the department field. Everyone in housing gets these apps. They're associated with this ZTNA profile. So everyone in housing can access these 4 servers, for example. And then they get that common content filtering policy applied as well. So the whole thing automated. From a licensing perspective, Entra HR-driven provisioning is covered within E3 and E5, and Endpoint Manager is covered within your E3, E5, and Entra Suite surrounds this to provide the automation at a broader level. I get it. I've worked in the public sector in IT departments for 25 years. You can't always influence what the HR and payroll team do, but everything in the red kind of box there, I believe, is within your gift to change and to automate and to transform. So there should be no barriers really for you to kind of take ownership of this and change these processes as you see fit. We talked there about the onboarding process, just very quickly about the offboarding and access reviews. I don't know about for you guys, but asset returns has always been a pain for me. Things end up in lockers. Employees don't know where to return things, right? But how about sending an email automatically? So Bob's going to leave the organization in 30 days. How about sending 3 email messages automatically saying, here are your corporate devices, with the serial numbers. You need to return them to this location. That process can be automated. How do you automatically wipe and prepare devices for the next user? So traditionally, devices would go back to a storeroom and a build room to be rebuilt. But now that's no longer needed. How do you automatically disable the account, remove licenses, automatically delegate access to Bob's email account to his manager, if that's part of your processes, and also send out notifications to say that actually all of these tasks have been completed, right? So maybe you need to raise the service desk ticket. Software and inventory of software license management essentially is tricky, and it's possible to automate that. So actually somebody needs access to a piece of software. How can you automate that? And actually someone's had access to a licensed piece of software, so Adobe or Project or Visio, etc. How do you keep checking that they need access? And if they don't need access, how can you take that license away? How can you reassign it so you're maximizing the use of your licenses? So this is like really super exciting type stuff. And I think if I was in the industry still, this would be the next kind of venture that would be on my mind, the next problem that I want to solve, end to end. The call to action from me is that implement HR-driven provisioning. It's within your existing licenses, and it's the core of onward transformation opportunity. So if you want to get to this level of automation, I recommend you start thinking about using HR-driven provisioning. Be aware of how much you pay for your VPN and content filtering. So this could be upwards of 150 to 200,000 pounds per annum, and you may not have that the logs from those solutions integrated with your security systems, right? So that's a clear thing there. So you might be able to save money and get a better security posture and visibility as well, right? The Entra Suite RRP, my advice to you is to reach out to your Microsoft account team to get accurate pricing on it. There's lots of deals, discounts, and ramps available. So, it's take that RRP with a pinch of salt. And that's it. That's it from me. At this point, I'll hand over to the Matt at the Condatis team. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Fingers crossed everyone can see the screen. We'll pretend that's a yes. Excellent. Cool. People are nodding. So I wanted to have a little chat about the Entra Suite as a whole and how the automations from all the different products can kind of tie together to help from not just from a technology standpoint, but from kind of a business and a user experience thing as well. So when we're looking at automations and, well, improving things for customers, we kind of use I say a foundation, and I use a in quotes because I am a fan of alliteration, and they all begin with A, and that made me happy. So first and foremost, right, we want to use automation. We need to reduce manual processes. We want to increase efficiency. And what this allows is for the really talented people we have who are working for us to be utilized above and beyond doing the standard repetitive tasks. And we can let some of the computers offload the really boring stuff so that they can get on with the exciting things. We want to encourage autonomy. We want to empower users to control their own destinies, but obviously within the guidelines set by the permissions models within the organization. If they think they need certain access, let's give them the option to apply for it and give us justification. And then we've got approval workflows to handle whether or not that access is actually allowed. We need accountability. We need to control those permissions that have been granted. We need audits. We need basically a digital paper trail of who's requested what, when, and who's approved it, when and why. And then my final A is attestation. We need to use the tooling to review assignments and right size where we need to. There's elements of this that can be manual, group-based, but we can also use machine learning as part of the Entra Suite to tie in with the automation part of this to take suggestions and insights from how things have been applied and then apply stuff automatically, which is very cool. So when we're looking at these pillars, we're asking questions as well. And these are very high level, and I'm not going to dive into them. Take a screenshot if you want, or hello to people watching the recording. This is basic, high level stuff. How do people get access? Why are they getting access? How is this process and how can it be improved? This kind of stuff. So yeah. Next off, right, we're going to look at kind of some historical stuff. So this might be familiar to some people on the call, right? We have, let's see if I can get my mouse on the go. We've got multiple sources of information. And it's very rare, I find these days, that organizations have a single source of truth. Often they have one for staff, for contractors, for partners, for people who don't necessarily need IT infrastructure, maybe cleaning staff or stuff like that, who don't need email and phone and laptops and stuff. And so what happens is all of that data gets brought down into an on-premises identity management system. Some of you might have heard of MIM. And that does stuff, and it's been great. It does, basic join and move a lever. It does password resets. It provides portal to do stuff. But the problem is that it's old. It's on-prem based, and it's so heavily code based and often been configured by people who have left the business years and years ago and developed in a time where documentation may have been considered optional. So when it breaks, people don't know what to do, and it's very difficult to maintain, and then becomes quite costly because it sits in the corner and you never really get the improvement. So how does an Entra-based solution differ from this? This turns into quite a slide, but I kind of want to include it to show how it builds up and how you get this kind of end-to-end piece. So first of all, with our basics, right, we bring people into Entra. We have our, as Adam mentioned, our HR provisioning. We can then give them basic entitlements. This might be through dynamic groups to say, if you're a member of this department, you get this license or something like that. We then have a user lifecycle throughout the time of their operation within the organization, and then they leave. And we have stuff that happens then. Sometimes on time, sometimes as and when people are told that the person has left. Now, if we layer these other elements on now, we can have these accounts appear in on-premises Active Directory as well. And this means that they can access applications that are stored on-prem. Maybe you've got legacy stuff that uses Kerberos or mainframes or stuff like that that need that on-prem authentication agent. We can add cloud applications directly into Entra, giving a single sign-on, dynamic provisioning with SCIM, very cool stuff with that. We can then use Entra application proxy and now private access to grant remote access to on-prem applications, and not just applications now, but we'll touch on that a little bit more later. But this means that wherever they are now, they can access the things that are on-prem in a nice, easy way without having to poke holes in firewalls or manage complicated group accesses and things like that. We then layer on access reviews and attestation to either do manual or automatic reviews of people's access and assign things appropriately. Lifecycle workflows can also be used to tackle scenarios like initial password sets and communications for specific, onboarding things. Go have a look at our onboarding, do this HR training, make sure you're set up for MFA and password reset, that kind of thing. And then even further, because lifecycle workflows can extend out using logic apps and other APIs, you can then basically connect it to any system. So you could use it, connect to Intune or to Jira or to ServiceNow and ticketing systems to really hook into existing processes and extend their functionality. So you don't have to replace things. You can just augment and make things a bit kind of slicker and nicer. So licensing, this will probably be one of my only brief bits on licensing, but I think this is a good image to kind of show what goes on. Everything here included in your E3, bringing people in, applications, Active Directory, great. Your governance, basic governance, gets included in E5. Enhanced governance, and this is where you can use things like the lifecycle workflows and add in verified ID to do some very funky stuff, is included in the governance license. And then Entra Private Access and Internet Access, which isn't on this slide, is included in the SSE SKU. And all of that is then wrapped up into Entra Suite. So if we go back right to the beginning, to the first step, to getting our data into the system, if we're not going to use like an identity manager solution, how do we get that data in? And this is the legacy approach. Everything goes into MIM. We have lots of stuff, and it could be SailPoint, it could be ForgeRock, it could be an on-prem solution that does stuff. What we essentially have within this is a database with a view of a user with all of their attributes from all of the different systems in a single place. And if we only had one source of truth, great, we just go straight to Entra because it will be a direct relationship. But if anyone appears or has the potential to appear in more than one of these systems, then they need to be matched up and a unique persona developed or a new unique identity, because we don't want to have multiple accounts because that's multiple licensing, more confusion for users, expensive, difficult to manage. So instead, what we pivot to is using an Azure-based data platform, using data lakes to store data and data fabric and data factories to do the transformations and orchestrations. Now, this is great because it abstracts the data from your directory, because on-premises Active Directory has a lot of attributes, but they are limited. Like, there's only so many you can extend and add to. And there's also only so much data that you actually want visible within those. If you're creating accounts on-prem, there's a lot of sensitive data that you might want to use as part of your conditional access policies or your access policies that you don't want to have visible to everyone who can right-click and go to properties on that user, like BPSS data or security clearance, or do they have litigation hold on them or something like, there's lots of things where you might want to store this in a database, but in a secure area where only the applications that need to access that data can. So this becomes then a central repository for all identity data across the organization. And your Entra directory then becomes just a consumer of that. And you can control very granularly, if that's a word, which applications have access to which data and which people within those applications then have access to it. So it's a very flexible system. So now that we've got the user into Entra ID, how do we automate what they get access to? And the ID governance brings a lot of different parts to the user journey. And it's intrinsic now to the modern kind of joiner, mover, leaver, and the rehire process. And the core feature within the product is access packages. Basic access packages are available within the E5 SKU. And again, we get the extra enhancements in governance, and it's all included in Entra Suite. So quick recap. What's an access package? So fundamentally, an access package is a group of things: applications, Entra roles, groups, teams, and it's all brought together as like a single point for people who have similar roles. So if you have multiple people doing a job, instead of cloning someone's user account now, you can grant them the access package that gives them the same access. And this is great because you can build the catalog and you can add applications multiple times in this catalog with different role profiles. And then you can have different access packages with different roles assigned to them. So if someone is a user within a system, but also needs to make administrative changes, they can request an elevation and they can have another access package for a set amount of time, which grants them that access to the app and then is revoked. There's also brilliant scenarios with the access packages for automatic expiry. And we use this a lot for partners, contractors, and guests, where you're not necessarily controlling the identity because it's in another directory, and they need to, they need to tell you if the person has left, because otherwise there's just a stub left in your Entra, and you don't really know whether it's still active or not. And so you can use these time-based models to say, okay, well, this person can have access for 30 days. It will automatically be removed from them unless they go into the portal and say, I need it for another 30 days. And that way it automatically cleans up. And you can use bits from access reviews as well to then automatically deprovision guest accounts when they don't have any access left. And so that means while people are active and using the account, they have everything they need. And when they stop, they just fade into the background and disappear. But then when they need access again, they can just go through the process and get access. No muss, no fuss. Other elements of access packages that are great for kind of privileged access or for people with multiple roles is for separation of duties. You can grant access to specific things so long as you don't already have access to other things. And it will flag up to the user and say, hey, you're an admin of HR data. You can't also be an admin of the bank accounts because you might, I don't know, do something nefarious. So you can put those blocks in place to say you need to remove yourself from this role so that you can add yourself into this one. And there's a nice little portal where you can actually just chop and change between your roles to make it a more pleasant user experience. Because pivoting between that kind of stuff, it's not something that everyone does every day. And so there needs to be a little bit of thought process because you have more rights than like other base level people. So we want to try and make it as easy as possible within the bounds of still having a solid security process in place. And again, all of these have got backing off to logic apps and custom tasks. So if you want to use this as part of a ticketing workflow where the built-in approval workflows aren't enough and you need to extend that out to other services, you can do that, and it will wait for the responses and then it will carry on with its actions. Very flexible. I'm probably saying that a lot. Now, there's a lot in Entra Suite, and we're not going through it all today. But as Adam mentioned, there's two bits, the secure service edge bits, that are two pieces of the puzzle. And yes, they're great. They're all great standalone products. Where they really, really shine is when you combine elements of all of them and work together to build the processes. So often what we do is we work backwards with people and we look at the business process and the experience that they want for their users to have, and then map the different areas of the technology onto those processes so that you have something that is robust, scalable, and pleasant to use. And a lot of this comes from the lifecycle workflows, because this is kind of our blend here, right? So we can do some basic out-the-box stuff. We can send emails, assign licenses, do groups, access packages. The emails can be customized so that they've got, nice welcome to the team, and they use attributes to make it, a tailored experience for the user. Onboarding with temporary access passcodes, like the initial password set and communication of that is always such a big chore. And yes, we need to get rid of passwords, but we absolutely have to stop sending passwords in plain text in emails to managers and random people in the hopes that eventually it will get to the user so they can log on their first day. And so combining elements, strong authentication and phishing resistant credentials with the lifecycle workflows means that as part of your user's onboarding journey, they can receive a temporary code that is one-time use and only valid when they actually show up for day one. They can use that to configure stuff and get access and get on with their day. We can then layer on another level for over the top of access reviews and conditional access to use verified credentials. And there's an element of this, right? This is great. You can use it to protect digital estates and groups and verify someone's identity, but this can also extend to physical locations. Okay, if your door control system, as an example, is connected into Entra, you can have, there's a sensitive area of the building that only certain people can access, that controlled by a group. You slap that into an access package and you put verified ID on it. Now, if someone wants to access that, they have to verify that it is them making the request on their device. And if you add face check onto it, they have to do a liveness check as another step to prove it's definitely them. So it's very powerful and can extend beyond kind of our digital estate, which is lovely. And face check as well helps prevent social engineering attacks, like the MGM Grand stuff that happened a little while back. Because in that instance, there was a privileged user account and they had their account compromised because the help desk operative had no way to verify that it was actually that user ringing them up and saying, please, can you reset all my details and my MFA details? If both the help desk staff and the end users had verified credentials deployed, they would be able to verify with each other that they were both employees before any of those actions took place, and the attack would have been stopped in its tracks. And the verified help desk scenario is one that we're seeing quite a lot. Now, we talked a little bit about private access, and I love private access. Private access is great because app proxy was great. When it first came out, the concept of, securely deploying on-prem web applications to people to access them in the cloud, and you didn't need inbound firewall rules. That was amazing. Loved it. Now you can do that with basically anything. You've got a printer. You've got a remote desktop connection. You've got a file share on a server somewhere. The main goal for this is to wrap all of these connections into the Entra conditional access model. And so now they are modern auth aware. So before you connect to this remote desktop connection, it goes, oh, you're trying to get onto that server. Please make sure it's you. Maybe, are you on a compliant device? Are you in a compliant location? Have you done an MFA check? Have you done a face check? Are you allowed to do this? Which kind of takes the power and the flexibility of that conditional access engine and just extends it kind of everywhere. Now, you don't need to VPN into a place. You've got these profiles where you can just, a user can click a link on their desktop and they have no idea what's going on in the background, because as far as they're concerned, they click the link, the application launches, they do their job. But underneath it, it's doing all the checks to make sure it's them, they're in the right place, they're in the right location, on a compliant and a secure machine. And yeah, being able to do this for telnetting into switches or flat file shares and stuff, I think is absolutely fantastic. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, but they're all extensible. Okay, we can extend all of this stuff out using Logic Apps, which is a low-code, no-code, low-code, no-code platform. Basically, if something has an API, you can then connect to it and interact with it and do stuff with it. And the one that's on screen at the moment was the one that I had in my development environment that actually did device wipes. And it would go through a Lever user, and it would check if they had personal devices enrolled, and if it did, it would wipe the container. So just the data within those apps that belong to the organization would vanish. And if they had autopilot enrolled machines, it would wipe those devices as well. Now, story time, because I've talked about a lot about technology and process and stuff, but what does the actual user experience feel like? Because that's often kind of left till the end of the process, because we're all concerned about process and technology and security and stuff, which, don't get me wrong, is very important. So meet Jen, my generic user. She's our new hire. She's accepted her job position, and she's been talking to our HR team. She's actually starting in HR. So the first thing that she does is confirm with the HR team and the recruiting team that all of the details that she has provided are correct. You know, name, phone number, email address, contact details, all the normal onboarding stuff. She waits for a little bit and she receives an email with a temporary access passcode and a nice customized thing to say, hey, welcome to the team. Keep this safe. You'll need it on day one. It won't do anything until day one, so don't even try. In the background, the lifecycle workflows in Entra have taken the information from that HR system, looked at her as a person and said, right, okay, she's starting in HR. She's going to need a mailbox. She's going to need these groups. She's going to need this SharePoint site, and she's going to need these applications. And it will just do that and assign that and make sure that mailboxes are provisioned and a OneDrive is provisioned and everything is ready to go. But her account is disabled. On day one, the lifecycle workflows trigger in the background as well and enable her account. And this way, the attack surface is kept right to the minimum because the account is only actually live when it needs to be, which is nice. Now, Jen turns up and she uses the code that has been sent to her to log it into the Authenticator app on her phone. And what that does is it registers her phone as a device within Entra and allows her to use passwordless logon using the biometrics on her phone. She then gets given a laptop that has been enrolled in Autopilot, not pre-prepared or anything, just enrolled. And she logs into that. She sticks her email address in and it goes, give me your passwordless details. And she authenticates with her phone and she logs in. Sat in her inbox waiting for her is an email address. Sorry, it's an email, not an address, that is fully customized to her with all of the links she might need with resources and welcome to the team and here's where we chat and here's where we get coffee and a loser down the hall and all that kind of stuff. And she can consume that at her leisure and get on with her day. Now, at no point has a password been set on this account. If someone sends her a phishing email and she clicks that link, she doesn't have details to put into it, and so no credentials can be captured. It's great. And we'll hold on to that because the passwordless is good. Okay, time has gone by. Jen has got restless feet. She's decided that HR is not enough power for her and she wants to move into IT. And she aces the interviews. And the HR team update all of her information in the source system. What happens then in the background is that change is picked up. And because access packages have been configured, it goes, you're not in HR anymore, so you don't need access to this, this, and this. We'll remove that. Oh, but you're in IT now, so you need access to 1, 2, 3, XYZ. So we'll give you that. And one of the nice features is that you can have both simultaneously for a handover period, and you can configure those handover periods within the access package. So she might not lose all of her HR stuff because she might be training someone else for her first couple of weeks before she transitioned completely out of her role. Or she might need, someone might ring her for help and say, how do you do this? And she can still help them out. But then the access goes and because she doesn't need it anymore. Now, the access packages can also contain, because they can contain roles, right? They don't just have to be, now you're an admin. They can be controlled using the privileged identity management model as well. So she has eligibility on a just-in-time, just-enough access model. And she can get on with the day. Lovely. Now, Jen flies a little too close to the sun and decides that she wants to steal some data from the organization, and things turn a little bit sour. And now we need to offboard her in a hurry because she's a threat. And in this scenario, right, HR are informed, systems updated, the lifecycle workflows pick up on stuff, strip off privileged access, wipe devices, wipe bring your own stuff. And because right back on day one, she authenticated using passwordless, her only authentication mechanism, because she's never set a password, has gone. So because she can't verify on those devices anymore, she can't go to another device and try and log in and exfiltrate data or do anything like that as her access. Just blatted, gone. And this, I'll admit, is a hammer to crack a nut. There's a lot more nuance and a lot more different flexibility that you can do within these policies, but it kind of shows what the experience can be and how simple it can be from a user perspective and intuitive to use, excuse me, which I think is a very powerful thing within an organization, because when you're deploying these stuff, we can evangelize about the technology all that we want, but unless it's nice to use and we have the champions from the user side, that can be an uphill struggle for everyone involved. So my call to actions. Funnily enough, one of them's the same as Adam's. Have a look at HR provisioning. That data is key. Being able to make sure that that is up to date, sanitized, correct, and accurate takes so much of the stress and pressure off all of those downstream processes and systems. And also, Entra has a 90-day trial, or Entra Suite has a 90-day trial. So there's loads you can do within, but if you want to have a look at some of the fancy stuff, or you want to do a proof of concept, or even just some demos of the other bits, come and have a chat. We're always happy to help.
Fantastic. Matt, thank you very much for that. Thank you also to Adam for giving his expert view, as I say, having worked in the public sector in the City of London and now working for Microsoft, for that penny drop moment of exactly how Entra Suite is a bit of a game changer. I thought it was really impactful as well when you're saying all of these tools pretty much are likely to be within your gift if you're provisioning IT services and for you to choose. Just to give a bit of an overview, we're going to open it to Q&A in a second. I see already Dan Taylor's got a question in there. A few takeaways that I'd like to think of. The first is, at Condatis, we are using the tools ourselves. So we've used Entra ID Governance for our own HR provisioning. So we're using that already. Also, the use of Entra Verified ID. We've been one of the global leading partners for Microsoft in using decentralized identity. There's a case study on our website, but we use it as access to our office every day. So we have a credential in Authenticator. We just scan a QR code when we come in the office and hey presto, we're in. So we are currently using these technologies. Identity is a foundational part of cybersecurity. What Matt and Adam have shown here is the automated provisioning of credentials for people, that HR automation that takes away the risk and hassle of allocating passwords for human error. We all know that the most likely route into a cybersecurity breach is through human error. So automate that provisioning. Entra Suite now covers a whole bunch of different areas. Some of the aspects of VPNs that Adam touched on, we can now resolve using private access, internet access, and secure service edge. But also look at avoiding software tool overlap. I'm sure many of you are responsible for a lot of different tools. Microsoft is making a significant investment in joining those dots together. And within your maybe E3 or E5 license, depending on the sector you're in, you will likely have many of these tools already within the license provision. If you're not sure, have a chat with your account technical strategist or whoever your account lead in Microsoft is. If you want to come direct to us, we are always happy to help at Condatis. Just to be clear, we don't sell licenses at Condatis. We're not there to try and sell you more licenses. We're just trying to make you have the best provision of the licenses you currently have. Okay, now we've got 8 minutes. I'm delighted to see that most people have stayed throughout it and kept wide awake, I'm sure. I guess the first question then, maybe I can pass that one over to Adam. Could you have a look? Hopefully you can see the Q&A. First question is, how does all of this work in tenants with a mix of E3 and E5s? Are there any challenges from this?
Yeah, so Jonathan's already had a go at responding to that. Jonathan, did you want to just kind of verbally kind of run through that?
Yeah, sure, no problem at all. Yeah, so if you've got E3 and E5, you can allocate the licenses that you need within the suite to the users. So you don't have to buy it for all the users within your environment. You can pick and choose which ones you want to allocate the licenses to, and then you just got to make sure that the appropriate licenses. We've got step-up licenses from E5 to be able to reduce the cost, or alternatively, there's licenses from E3, so you can just allocate those. So yep, can work happily with E3 and E5 as a mixture of licenses there.
Yeah, and when you're deploying the products as well, there's a lot of area within scoping. So if you're scoping, say, elements of the governance or the verified ID to those users will need the governance SKU, which is, you know, a step up from the other ones. So you can make sure that the scoping for those policies only target people with those licenses to make sure that you're in compliance. Of course, the ultimate answer is please buy all the licenses and governance for everyone. Isn't that wonderful? But I know that that's not realistic, really.
I think depending on your requirements, you can pick and choose and make it most cost optimal. Entra Suite obviously covers everything, but it also displaces existing technologies such as existing VPN solutions, existing content filtering solutions. And without getting the quote, without understanding what that cost may be or what your requirements are and what the cost could be, is you may actually end up with a saving being on the table. Right. So,
and if you're talking about just provisioning is covered in E3. So all of that HR provisioning stuff, provisioning into other SaaS apps, that's all covered with the basic level license. So everyone can have that.
Great. And I've seen there's a second question in from Tina, which our James Young has already answered. So yes, we will be making a recording available for the session. I won't be listening to it because I hate the sound of my own voice, but I hope for everybody else, you can look through in your own time, pause to great effect and listen to the expert guidance that you get from either Adam or Matt. What I would say is if you have further questions on the back of that, Adam and Matt have come with, I'll be polite here, decades worth of experience. So it's not something which we pick up overnight. Also, Matt and I, with one of our other colleagues, will be in Redmond at the Microsoft HQ all of next week. We are based in the UK, but we have opportunity to ask detailed questions of Microsoft, their R&D teams in both Dublin and Seattle. And quite honestly, the technology landscape does change and develop. So there are always new things coming along the line. Matt spends a lot of his time looking at features in private and public preview to make sure that we can give the expert provision of what's currently best in class.
And one of my favorite things to do is to take difficult questions from customers and give those to Microsoft and go, hey, what about this? And see what they have to say. That's always good fun. So if you've got any, just fling them my way and I'll take them away with me. Okay.
We still have 3.5 minutes on the clock. If anybody wants to throw a difficult question at Matt, he would then just pass over the screen over to maybe Adam or John. But I don't see any other questions in my field at the moment.
I think that's it. Unless there's any other questions, we can close down. Just feel free to reach out. Any questions, any support that you need. I'm just to bounce ideas. We're all around. So yeah, feel free to do that.
So huge thanks to, in the background, you may not know, but there's a fine gentleman, James Young, who has facilitated today. So big shout out to James, you've done a fantastic job. Thank you very much, John and Adam, for agreeing to be on this webinar with us, and to Matt Fernandez, the guru of everything. What did you say? You were a slide ninja this morning. But I think an awful lot more than just that. but hopefully some insight and the expertise here. Thank you very much for listening. There are other recordings of Condatis expertise on both on YouTube and on a web link. I will stop trying to sell you stuff right now, but again, thanks very much. I hope to see you on other webinars in the future. Bye bye for now.
Cheers. Take care. Bye bye.